All right, I'm going to go ahead and get started. And so I want to just welcome everyone today to our coffee hour. If you've been joining us for the last several months, we've been doing a monthly coffee hour where we get together with farmers and we talk about, just general farming questions. Actually, however the conversation goes, that's how we've been doing it. But this month, we are changing up our entire format. And I'm going to talk a little bit more about that in a bit. But before we get started, I'd like to do our land acknowledgement. So we acknowledge that there are 46 treaties and other agreements that cover the territory now called Ontario, where the Ontario Organic membership resides. And we are so thankful to be able to work and live in these territories. And we are grateful to the First Nations, Métis, and Inuit people who have cared for these territories since time immemorial and who continue to contribute to the strength of Ontario and to all communities across the province. And recognizing that we're all coming from different places. If you'd like to share your land acknowledgement in the chat, we'd love to see that. And feel free to also drop in the chat where you're coming from, and we can learn a little bit about everybody that's here today. All right, so our next slide here is talking a little bit about us. So if you haven't noticed, we used to be the Organic Council of Ontario. In January, we have rebranded for so many reasons, and we're so proud to be Ontario Organic. And so, just to let you know that we're still here doing a lot of the same stuff that we've always done, but we're trying to do it bigger and stronger and better than ever before. And if you're not familiar with us, we're a grassroots network or a not-for-profit, and our job really is to bring together farmers, businesses, and eaters to build a stronger organic food system, which is grounded in science and, of course, driven by our community. And we're really honored to play this place in the organic value chain role to be able to serve so many of you in all sorts of different ways. And one of those ways is providing the webinars that we do provide online. And so today I just want to talk a little bit about what's happening with our webinars. So last year we started our monthly chats, and they went so well. We had so many people come out for those coffee chats, and we covered so many different kinds of farming. Um, the conversations, they were real, they were practical, and exactly what people needed. So this year, we're building on that, and we're moving to weekly coffee chats. And each one of those weeks will have a specific focus so that we can dive deeper into the topics that matter across the organic sector. So, how it's going to work is that the first week of each month will be focused on inputs and production, bringing in specialists to talk about things like soil health, cleaning equipment, practical farm improvements. And there's so many inputs out there that we're inviting all of those people to come in and talk to us about what they can do to help with organic farming. The second week of each month, which is where we are today, will be our grain growers and friends session, and that's where we are this month. The third week, we're actually going to be bringing together retailers that sell organic goods, and we're going to dig into what's selling, how customers are responding to organic, what's shifting in the market, and so much more around that retail side. And the fourth week will be dedicated to our market gardeners. So that will be our coffee series for the next little while, and we may be changing up those topics as we go. So any sort of feedback you give to us, anything you want to see, we're happy to hear about that. So our goal is to create consistent, ongoing conversations within each group so that we can build momentum over time. And today we're kicking off with our first coffee hour with our grain growers. And this is going to be the same group joining us each month, which I'm really excited about because it gives us a chance to build real continuity in that conversation and dig into issues as they evolve. And we brought in some amazing experts in the grain growers section. So let's introduce our grain growers. Our first one is Greg Dineen, and he is a 41-year-old farmer located near Kenilworth, Ontario, in his 12th year of farming organically. And he farms with his wife and two young sons and with help from his parents. Their farm is right on the edge of Dundalk Highlands, enjoys all that Highlands has to offer. Crop rotation includes soy, corn beans, wheat, rye, and black beans. As a recovering relapsed engineer, he enjoys the occasional dive into machinery design and is currently leading a project with the University of Guelph on ultra low cost electric grain drying. Experiences include top dressing cereals with hog manure and digestate, twin row soybeans and swathing soybeans, snow combining of corn, trials on low population corn in organic production. Our second panel member today is Phil Ugama, and he transformed his 1,200-acre family farm to organic in 2012. Now, Ugama Grains grows organic crops and uses innovative tools like the weed zapper. Phil shares his expertise and runs an organic elevator for other farmers. As the 2024 president of the Ontario Soil and Crop Improvement Association, he promotes farmer-led solutions. And our third panel member is Dean Martin, him and his sons operate Harrow Organic Farms located in Harrow, Ontario. And they farm 1,500 acres of certified organic grains and oil seeds in Harrow and on Pelee Island. Dean has been a cash crop farmer in the Harrow area for 40 years and began transitioning to organic in 2005. He is a University of Guelph graduate of 83 and a former director of the Seed Corn Growers of Ontario, a past speaker at the Southwest Ag Conference and Guelph Organic Conference, and he is one of our Ontario Organic board members, and we're really happy to have him join us. So I'm going to I don't know if you've stopped sharing our screen there. There we go. I'm going to go ahead and get started with some of our questions today for our panelists. First of all, for our three panelists, did I miss saying anything about you that you'd like to include in your biography? Greg, I appreciate that you put your age there. I'm not sure I put my age on it, but I like that you're like, yeah, I'm a young farmer, which is good to have. Um,
I would say I'm a little uncomfortable with the moniker of expert. I try to screw up a little bit less every year is kind of, I guess, my mode. So I appreciate being called that, but I think there's a lot of knowledge on this panel and in this group. So I'm happy to share with what we do, but I'm not an expert yet.
okay, all right. So we will take expert away from your name there, Phil. All right. So my first question that I have for you today is this is our topic today is fertilizing organic winter wheat. And I think really the first thing to ask is about your location. We have names about your locations, but can you describe where you're at, what the weather looks like, what the soil looks like, anything that might be important for people to know so that they can say, "Oh yeah, that's really relatable to what I'm farming in," and those situations. Do you want to start us off, Phil?
Sure. So our farm is located just south of London, a little bit west of St. Thomas. So if you're driving on the 401 west and the 402 and the 401 meet, we're about 10 minutes from that spot, a little bit southwest of that. I would say that our soil, I would describe it as a clay loam primarily. We have some heavier clays. We have some lighter, I wouldn't call it sandy, a sandy loam. There's some knolls of sandy loam. Relatively consistent, although we do have a few fields where we have our lightest sand, followed by about 100 meters down the field of some of our heaviest clay. So there is some variability in our area. But primarily we've got, I would say good soil, good to farm, relatively well drained, clay loam just southwest of St. Thomas. We don't get the big snows that I would say a lot of folks do get and have gotten north of London. And so, we do get snow. We did have snow cover for a good part of this year. We did not get a deep frost because we had some early snow. But yeah, that's kind of where we're geographically located and weather located. Not a ton of snow, but we do get some.
Okay. All right. It sounds like a lot of variety there in soil types. How about you, Greg? What do you got going on there?
So Kenilworth is just kind of right on the edge of the Dundalk Highlands. So if I go 10 or 15 minutes north, I'm into like you'll just see a lot of the real short corn varieties. Historically, just a lot of forages, a lot of dairy. Um, like we did our first field of soybeans like 20 years ago, and I remember everybody always said you couldn't do grain corn north of Arthur. And so, the new corn and new soybean varieties have allowed us to get into grains in a different way. Historically, my area was like just, haylage, just silos, just dairy operations filling silos because you wouldn't do grains other than your small grains. So yeah, that's kind of one of our struggles is we do get those big snows and we do have those late frosts and then those early frosts, and that's just kind of we're that part of Ontario. Just because of our elevation, we're up near those highlands, and so our weather is comparable to what you'll find like north of Ottawa, and like fairly so cold as far as southern Ontario goes, short season. We do have really nice soil. Like our 500 acres is all kind of within like a mile and a half. And so it's similar soil the whole way, and it's all a silt loam that drains pretty well. So other than a couple of spots, not really variable, and probably three quarters like level or close to level, gently sloping, and only kind of 50 or 75 acres that I'd describe as rolling. So yeah, pretty nice soil, all fairly close to the farm. So a bit easier to manage that way. I more or less know where the rains fell. I got three different gauges out, so I'm only managing a mile and a half. Um, yeah.
Okay. All right. Thanks, Greg. That's really useful information. And Dean, how about you?
Um, I'm located in Harrow and on Pelee Island. Will be heading over to Pelee Island this afternoon to spread some fertilizer on the wheat. We've been held up there because the boat just started running this past week. Our soil is clay to clay loam, a lot of clay loam, and then a little bit of sand. 3,600 heat units, and very flat. So right now it's like I think it's supposed to go up to 70 degrees today, and some people were cutting grass on the weekend, and the wheat has definitely greened up and kind of broke. So yeah, it's starting to happen here.
Okay. And for people who might not know where Pelee Island is or Harrow, do you want to kind of tell them where you are in Ontario for that?
So Harrow is in Essex County, so we're in the very far southwest. And then Pelee is further south than that. So we're Pelee Island is right between the Ohio and Ontario, out in the middle of Lake Erie. So yeah, we're as far south as you can get.
Okay. All right. And hold on a sec. I've lost my notes here. In all of my things here. Dean, um, we're gonna be talking a little bit about the winterizing of wheat. What would be sort of the first things that you guys are not winterizing, but the wheat that you have coming out? What would be some of those things that you would share with us in terms of what's important right now?
So so the early spring and the wheat, of course, for some of the fields putting on some clover. Um, when we put clover on, we haven't put any on yet. We'll be putting on single cut clover because double cut clover tends to outgrow the wheat. But we tend to put it on a little later than conventional wheat just to make sure that the clover doesn't outgrow the wheat. And then we'll be looking right now to put on fertilizer, which putting on some fertilizer on the wheat. We'd like to have done it in March, but we couldn't get to the island in time. So we'll be using some Tech Mech from Terry Good up at, where's he at? Up north of Godrich. And we spread that at about 1,000 pounds to the acre, 1,200 pounds. And then we also put some digestate on. At home, we have a digestate lagoon.
Okay. And do you want to, for people who might not understand what a digestate is, do you mind sharing a little bit about what that is?
An anaerobic digester, and there's one in the area that they basically put food scraps and greenhouse waste in, and they anaerobically digest it to produce methane for electricity. What comes out is approved for organic, and it's kind of best resembles a thin liquid manure. And it has, I think it's about 6 or 7% nitrogen, and then a little potash and phosphorus. And we'll spread that on the wheat at about 6,000 gallons to the acre. And we have a guy come in and do that. And we're hoping to get 75 or 80 pounds out of that.
All right. Excellent. All right. Phil, how about you? What are things looking like right now with your wheat and what products are you using and so forth to kind of get things started?
Well, I guess to start at the very, very beginning, I try to grow actually a little bit shorter of a soybean variety the year prior. I find that the best wheat with the biggest potential is my earliest planted wheat. So if I, at least in my area, if I can get that planted at the end of September or beginning of October, then I think I'm well off to the races for a good crop. So as quick as I can get the planter behind the soybean harvester, that's what we're doing. I don't put anything down in the fall in terms of fertilizer, and I plant uh, around 1.6 or 1.8 million seeds per acre to start with in the fall. If things get pushed back later in October, then I start pushing the population, to 2 million, 2.2 million, just so there's enough tillers, there's enough plants there in the spring. So in our area right now, things are definitely starting to green up. It sounds like I have a pretty similar program to Dean. I use Good and Green from TechMech as well. We bought a special spreader, a Stolfa spreader for that stuff. It's a very, very fine, light product. We started using that product with the spinner with a lime spreader, and we just found that most of it blew away and fertilized the neighborhood. And so that's a lot of money to spend on your neighbor. What I like about the Good and Green is that it does seem to have some initial soluble nitrogen. So within a week or two of putting the product on, we can see a definitive green up, and you can see the little spots that you've missed. So that tells me that there's a pretty good availability right off the hop. But then the rest of it is a pretty slow release. So it is available throughout the growing season, and I think there's actually some available for the following corn crop as well. So we put 1,500 pounds on all of our wheat acres, and we have a clover spreader attached as well. So in the same pass that we put the nitrogen down, it's got some P and K in it as well. But we also put single cut, just like Dean. We tried double cut, but as Dean, especially if you run into some wetness in the summer, the double cut will overtake the wheat. So we're generally single. We are single cut, and we do that in one pass as soon as we can get on. This year, I'm getting a little bit worried because it has been a bit wet and cold, so it's getting pushed back further and further. And so that the sooner we can get it on, the better. We just haven't had frost to do it, and now things are a bit wet. So that's how we start off.
Okay. All right. And that's really good information too about what you were doing in the fall beforehand, because that really feeds into springtime as well. Greg, how about you?
All right, so my basic population is 2.2 million seeds. I think it was probably about 6 years ago that we were early enough that we could go less than that. And I think we were still 1.9 or 2 million. They updated the serial charts a couple of years ago, and they actually changed our zone from a September 15th recommended planting to a September 12th. And normally we're like October 10th or 15th. So it's like you're late enough already. It's like 2.2 million. Um, Again, same as what Phil was saying. It's as quick as we can get into the field. We did play around with swathing soybeans for 4 or 5 years, Early on when I was organic, I'd get some soybean fields that just went really sideways and they'd just turn into lamb's quarters fields. But we were finding if you went in and you swathed them, you could move them up by 10 or 14 days harvest. And then that turned out to be the best wheat. And so, yeah, for quite a while, we toyed with making swathing a regular thing. But it's the straight cut cutter bars that are the problem. If you get into any hilly ground, you just about need a flex bar, and then that's a whole other technology level and expense level. But yeah, very much we have a brand new Redicop chopper on the combine so that we can take care of any residue we have, especially that really tough stemmed weeds. Try to make a tillage pass as quick as we can. And we actually just went to a Vaterstad drill so that we can, even if we don't make that tillage pass, we can go in and we can do the tillage with the drill, and then we can seed on our, I think it's 4.9 inches. And it's just the narrow spacing takes better advantage of the short growing season, and you can run very close in behind the combine. And we're still going to be 2 million plus seeds because that's kind of what the season is. We have a fair bit of manure in the rotation, so yeah, I also don't put anything down in the fall. We just get the crop going. And then our fertilizing at this point is just hog manure. We were getting digestate in for a number of years, and then they didn't like hauling quite this far in the winter, and I didn't quite want to pay for it because we have enough hog manure. So we're getting from a neighbor's barn. He's kind of landlocked. He's on 20 acres, so we just take all of his manure as a long-standing agreement. It's a fair wing operation, so it is very thin. Um, I have done lots of testing on the manure, and I actually have a tank side tester if I want to double check a particular pit, which I used for a couple of years till I kind of had a feel for what was going where, depending on where the animals were. I would say 4,000 imperial gallons is our starting point. If we have, rain coming overnight, I can step that down to 3 of 35. If we've got 5 days of sun coming, I might put that up to 5 or even 55. And then we'll make a bit of a call. If it's an especially thick crop, you might not want to get carried away. You can end up with lodging, but that's not so often a problem. And so it's kind of 4,000 is where we start and we see from there. And that usually works out to be about 90 pounds. It's like we'll put on 110, and then what actually gets into the ground is probably 90.
Okay. All right. And so that's a lot of you guys are using, I mean, you're using a very different mix than what Phil and Dean are using in terms of fertilizer. Do you guys think that makes a difference in terms of crop production or timing of year or anything like that by having sort of the tech mech versus the hog manure applications?
I'd say it might be a little bit more complicated for me, at least in the sense that you got to get a lot of weight across the field. And so we do have to be careful, even with big float tires on the tankers, you're moving a lot of weight, a lot of volume. And if you're talking about it, being time sensitive, like we contracted out, and so like 4 9,000 gallon tankers show up to work for a day. It'd be tough and expensive to do it by yourself. And then you'd be tempted to, oh, the field's not quite dry enough, but I really got to get going, so I'm going to get out there. And then you do a ton of compaction damage because you're time pressured. So that'd be one drawback anyways to doing it with manure.
Yeah. And what about cost? Is it significantly less expensive to do it with the manure, or is it just different?
That's a good question. I don't know what TechMac costs. Like for us, it's really just spreading. I don't buy the manure, so it's not too bad that way. Um, what do you think, Phil and Dean? What does TechMac cost per acre?
I can't remember exactly. It's not a cheap product, but it's a nice product to work with. You just put it in I put mine in a lime spreader. My Tech Mech, I leave it sit out in a pile all winter, and then I scoop it up this time of year, and part of it's wet and part of it's dry underneath. So a lime spreader puts it on. I can't remember what it is per ton. I think Phil keeps it dry in a bin, don't you, Phil?
Yeah, yeah, it's not cheap. So I would say we're spending over 250 bucks an acre on the Tech Mech. Um I guess for me, I think spring compaction is a big deal. So tankers in the spring and spring compaction is compaction that lasts all year long,
Yeah.
and into the next year. So I think like Dean said, in that sense, it's a nice product because you control it. You can control it. We do keep it dry in a bin. Um, Compaction is still a bit of an issue because we are now waiting for the ground to get fit just to drive over. Um, but yeah, it's easy to work with. And I think everyone's working with different constraints, I think, on their farm. So we've got a labor constraint and a time constraint with the number of acres that we're covering. And so what I like about Good and Green is when we're ready, we can go, we can control the product, we can control what we're doing, when we're doing it. So that's good. And that being said, if I had a big liquid manure lagoon with finishing hog manure on it, I'd take it and I'd figure it out. I'd probably drag line it or something like that. So one of our constraints is, that the logistics of that operation is not small when you're dealing with 5, 6, 7,000 gallons an acre.
Yeah.
I would say liquid manure is the strongest of the products, probably the best of the products. It's just the logistics of getting it on, and like you say, the how heavy it is of a product to put it out. That's quite a spreader you shared there, Greg.
Yeah, Greg, you can share that again if you want to. I know Phil was talking, it came up, but kind of tell us a little bit about it
Yeah, I was
and
partly making sure I just knew how to share, so I didn't want to steal your
oh,
thunder
that's
exactly. Just
No,
perfect.
no, it's good.
I wouldn't even try to do that. Our digestate, we use a drag line. We have somebody come in, but the pond is in the kind of in the middle of the farm, and we have the guy comes in with 1 mile of drag line, and there's other than the tractor, there's no compression, no compaction, but it's not as strong a product. We also never quite know how much to put on, so.
all
Mhm.
right, so I'll just show you guys that quick. That's actually the tracks left after that tanker went through a field. So you kind of have to trace them from the lower right and follow them up to the field to see them.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But when it is nice and dry, we can get those big tankers across the field with very little compaction, but it's definitely something to be aware of. If it keeps staying wet like this, I'm gonna be sweating in another 10 days.
How far does that spread, Greg? Is that like a 40-foot pattern or a 30?
So it's a 40-foot pattern. It's pretty wind sensitive though, and it's always windy in the spring.
Yeah.
And so, we've gone out and we've, had the tanker run very carefully at dead speed, and you go out and you measure it. And then like the wind comes up in the afternoon at like a quarter angle or something, and all of a sudden the spread pattern's different. And we've had a lot of trouble. Like if we actually overlap the tankers, then you got a 2 foot wide strip that's getting 8,000 gallons, and then it just goes down. And it can complicate harvest so much, just that one strip. Um, because then it's like you're straddling the header on it, and so one side you're trying to set it up to kind of get wheat that's almost down, and then the other side the wheat's all standing, so there's no right setting for the reel, and there's tough straw coming from one side and dry straw from the other side, and but yeah, so we keep them just far enough away. We do like a 40-foot center, and yeah, sometimes they spread on 38 or 37, and it's like I'd rather have the wheat be a little bit thinner in between, but still keep our harvestability. But this picture you're looking at here, there's some tracks just to the right, and then you can see some more kind of off to the left further. And so it's there's only kind of been one year they're completely invisible. Mostly they look like this. They're kind of the wheat's 6 or 6 inches, 4 or 6 inches lower there. And so you can just pick it out at the end of the season.
We
I've
call
got the
it,
same with my spreader.
Okay.
yeah.
No.
It and with all organic type products, it doesn't matter which of these products you use, it's very hard to judge the nitrogen. And part of that is even if you know exactly what the product is, what type of spring have we got? How's it good? Because it has to break down and be made available. So getting it in contact with the soil and having it warm enough to break it down. The Tech Mech is like that. Some springs it works better than others. And then there's
Hmm.
always carryover nitrogen from the year before. Not much, but it can change 10 to 20, 30 pounds. So it's not like in conventional farming where you go out with urea and put on, 100 pounds of actual and you got 100 pounds of actual and you know exactly what you got. Like you say, we're dealing with wind patterns and we're dealing with compaction and exactly figuring out how much is going to be available for that. We're putting it on in April and it needs to be available in May because it starts to here in this area anyway. Wheat starts to shut down the middle of June, and that nitrogen had to be available at the end of May and for that because we harvest 10th, 15th of July.
Yeah. And so I know that f first of all, Greg, like the tracks didn't like it didn't look like you'd lost a lot, but you're saying you're just barely able to harvest it because of how tall it is.
Um, no, not so much. It's just it's like if you end up overlapping, so you set the tankers to their 40-foot centers, like they're on GPS. So like my contractor's on GPS, so they come in with three or four of these tankers, and then they'll now they just have lines for each of the fields, and so it's like they set up their line, and then the tankers are all in the same line. You sometimes end up with one tanker goes one way, one tanker comes the other way. The wind plays with the spread pattern differently depending if it's blowing from behind or in front, and then you can end up with a 3 or even 4 foot strip that gets double fertilized, and so that wheat looks incredible all year, and like a couple of weeks before harvest, then it goes almost flat. And depending on what harvest is like if it's you're just kind of getting scattered clouds on the good days and 3 inches of rain each time it rains, which is every second day. It can already be tough. And then you've got that strip where it's like you almost want to run the combine right up the center of that so that it feeds in nicely and then turn around and run down the center of the next one. And then you've got this awkward, smaller or bigger piece. And then like I don't have the best harvesting equipment. Like I'm running a 925 auger head. And sometimes the spacing just works that it's like you're trying to run the divider up a whole bunch of wheat that's slanted in such a way that it just absolutely wants to pull up and like clog on that edge. And so yeah, then you end up just adjusting your spacing and dancing around. And now the straw windrows are different sizes. And so the baler comes in and thinks it's ready to go. And once he's a couple rounds in, he's like, wait a minute, some of these windrows are twice the size of the others and it's wet inside. And yeah, so I've definitely stepped back towards it's like, okay, let's make sure these tankers don't overlap. Let's do 40 or 42 feet. And then like if there's some thinner stuff here and there, that's fine, but I need to keep the harvestability up.
Yeah.
What yield potential are you looking at, Greg?
Probably like 75, 80 for the wheat, 90, 95 for the rye. And we've quit top dressing the rye now because the yield boost wasn't worth how incredibly unharvestable it would become. And then harvest would slow down and take longer, and some of it would get more rain, and then the falling number would be different, and you'd have three different lots of wheat between multiple bins, and marketing got weird, and so yeah, it's our rotation is corn, soybeans, wheat, rye. And so the wheat is always struggling to get in time, even with you doing, careful work to do that. And then after the wheat, we work up all of our ground. We do stone picking because I've become really, really serious about stone picking the last 5 years. And then it's like we'll be able to get the rye in like exactly when it needs to go in. We can do like perfect population September 15th, September 20th. And so it's rye that is our really big cereal. It goes in really good conditions and it really takes off. And then if we also fertilize that in the spring, yeah, it just becomes gigantic. And some years then it kind of half falls over and it becomes miserable to harvest. So we were getting incredible amounts of straw, which some years is worth a lot, but other years would just mess up our harvest altogether. And so there's more potential in the rye, but I probably need a bigger combine. That's my problem.
Rye is nasty. Rye is nasty. I don't.
Rye can be nasty.
It's
Yeah.
nasty.
Dean, how about you? What does your yield look like? Are you similar?
It it's not. It's the same or a little less actually, because it's very hard to manage the nitrogen. Like if you do get too much nitrogen on, it goes down, and then like on the island, it's tough to get it on everywhere. Where like you can't put digestate or manure over there. They don't like manure on the boat very well. Uh,
Yeah.
we look at 60 to 70, and wheat's one of those crops we don't make a lot of money on. But it's good rotation.
Yeah. How about you, Phil?
Yeah, I think similar to Dean, 65 to 75, and it does depend on soil type as well. Our heavier clays just don't seem to do as well with wheat. I think the nitrogen doesn't move as well. And yeah, heavier soil for us, it doesn't do as well as our better, well-drained clay loam, sandy loam stuff. So that's yeah, we're happy. We're pretty ecstatic if we hit 85 bushels, which you do on occasion, but I would say as an average, we're 70, 70-ish.
Okay. And Dean, I think it's important for people to note he has to take everything over by a boat or by onto the island with a boat. So you're like a very unique farmer on that location in terms of having to move all of your equipment across water.
Yes.
And and what kind of limitations do you have with that other than manure, obviously?
Yeah, last week we took over a tractor and a spreader and a front end loader on the first boat, and it was too wet to do anything. There was water laying everywhere, but I took it over and put it in the field. And then now we're just talking today, this morning. We just decided an hour ago that, yeah, we're going to try to get the boat this afternoon and go over and take tools with us because if anything breaks, you're kind of on your own over there. And we got, I don't know, a couple hundred acres of wheat over there that we'll spread on, and it's Tech-Mec. Just piling it in a pile works pretty good for us. It doesn't seem to, as long as you get a little rain on it, it doesn't blow away. When I dig into the pile, there'll be a foot of wet Tech-Mec on top, and then the rest is all dry. And Tech-Mec comes in it's kind of like a granulated powder. It almost looks like coffee grounds, fine coffee. And so anyway, that's what I'll be doing tomorrow morning, first thing, and trying to get it done before it rains and dealing with the wind. It's always a little windier over there. So
Yeah, it sounds yeah, this it's always a little bit harder to get the weather the weather going with the spring weather that we've been having, right? So, I know we might not be to that point yet where you guys are thinking about this yet, but I think it's kind of nice for other people to know as we head into the season. What do you guys do for weed controls? Like what are because that then is an issue, I guess, as well. So, Phil, do you want to get us started off on in terms of what you use for weed controls?
Sure, I do nothing. I I work it in the fall and I plant it. And if I'm in early enough and I have a good stand, then that's my weed control. I have tried to go in and lop off some thistles. We don't seem to have a huge thistle problem yet at this point in our the life cycle of our farm. So there's really nothing that I do other than make sure everything's worked in the fall.
That sounds ideal. You have no weeds.
Well, I wouldn't say that. I said I
No
don't
weeds,
do
but
anything about
you
them.
don't worry about them and you don't need to.
Yeah.
And is that because of where your wheat is going? If it would it matter if it you had different places for it to be bought by?
No, no, I wouldn't say so. I would just say that it hasn't been a big problem for us. And it's we've had other problems, don't get me wrong. Like we've had big fusarium problems, we've had bunt in the past, which we can talk about a little bit later. But in terms of weeds, I mean, thistles are a pain. We do have some thistle patches, but I would say that generally, if we have a stand of wheat, then that's good. I will also say though that I have ripped up, a lot of wheat in the past 7 or 8 years that was too full of holes. It didn't have a good enough stand. Wasn't able to patch anything in. I don't think spring wheat works for us. It gets too hot in the summer. And so I'm not opposed. If I don't like how it looks and it's going to be a big stinker, then I'll rip it up and I'll plant soybeans. And get back on track. So we haven't done that for a few years, but I have ripped up a lot of wheat in the past.
Okay. Have you played around with your varieties of wheat?
Right now I'm growing mostly hard red, so I'm trying to find the right hard red variety for us in terms of some of the Miller specs. But I haven't messed around a whole lot with different varieties of soft red. But to me, if it's the really good weed control is a good stand in my book.
Yeah. All right. How about you, Greg? You're nodding your head yes there.
Especially to the spring wheat thing. I think we had spring wheat one year that did 65 bushels, and we played everything the same way the next year, and I think it was 22 bushels. It was just the weather was different. one year it was, very supportive, and then the next year it turned dry at the end of May, and then that was it. And the spring wheat was just brutal. Um, so yeah, spring wheat variable. I don't think I've done that in 5 or 6 years. I'm the same. I'd rather just kick back to soybeans than watch spring wheat kind of look ugly all year long. Um, for us, early on, we really had trouble getting those strong wheat stands, and so yeah, we would get mostly thistles. Thistles became a really bad one for us for a while, and that was part of the reason for adding rye into the crop rotation. Even though you have a cereal following a cereal, but rye is fairly dissimilar from wheat, and we're doing enough tillage that we're not carrying residue over. Like we're keeping all the straw from the wheat. And so yeah, we haven't seen disease carryover. And then yeah, the rye stand is just incredible. And so it does a good job of tamping down on those perennials. Like you'll see some thistles, but it's kind of like a couple thistles, not the really thick patches, just like a couple stray thistles will get up and then you're there with the combine. And so yeah, good stand is the answer.
All right. And same for you, Dean? Or do you have
A
different?
little different. We do get some pretty strong thistles from time to time. What we've been doing is we leave tram lines in the wheat every 30 feet, and we plant tram lines so that we can drive the zapper in. The weed zapper, which electrocutes weeds. The only weed we really get is the thistles. Occasionally giant ragweed if the wheat is a couple of weeks past harvest date, like if it's been wet. But we find that if we go in with a weed zapper at about just the early bud stage of the thistles, it will just melt them right to the ground. If you're a little later into the flowering or later flowering, it does is effective, but not quite as effective. And but if you can catch it early enough, and when we have time, we don't always have time. We like to run the zapper through the wheat just to knock those back. And then we do get a lot of giant ragweed down here. And if you don't know what giant ragweed is, you can Google it, but don't touch it because you don't want it. It'll if we're a week late with the wheat, you may not see the wheat crop for thistles in some field or for giant ragweed in some fields. Just completely takes over, and then we go through with the zapper, and they melt down pretty good with the zapper. But you got to watch you don't set the field on fire at that point. Um, so, and then for variety, we've been planting the same variety year after year. It's Ava. We've been using our same seed. I think it's Ava. But you can run into problems with seed disease like bunt, like Phil mentioned, and then you have to switch out and get new seed. We have had that with barley a time or two.
Yeah. Just because I know some people on our chat today may not be as familiar with some of the terms. So like a tram line, my understanding is it's basically where you don't plant so that you can easily get down into your wheat. I haven't grown wheat itself, but is that right? Like you just are
Yeah.
leaving a line, and how wide is that line that you're leaving so that you can?
It's about 20 inches on two for each tire, so 20 inches on each side of the tractor. And we are planting with GPS, RTK, and so they're very accurate. And you can come back in even when the wheat is tall. You can come in and it will, even though you're only got an inch or so on each side of the tires, the automatic steering will keep you exactly in spot. And so it's not a big deal to go through with the zapper. Otherwise, you'd be knocking down probably 10% of the crop if you're going through later on. So sometimes you have to, but yeah, and with tram lines too, what you find is that the row next to the open space will produce more because it hasn't got competition of anything next to it. So with tram lines, you don't really reduce the yield at all. If you were to not have the tram lines and come in late in the season and knock down the wheat, then you lose that wheat you've knocked down. But leaving the ground open, the row next to it will make up the difference.
Yeah. Phil, do you use tram lines at all in your operation?
No, we haven't. I mean, I think it's great to hear that that works. And I think it's something to put in my pocket if we do start having problems with thistles because we have a zapper as well. So that's, we have that tool in our toolbox. But so far we haven't.
Yeah. And Greg, from your picture, it didn't look like you have them there, but do you have you worked with that before?
No, no, I haven't yet.
Okay. All right. Okay. Well, we've got about 10 minutes left in the talk today, and I wanted to open up for our guests here. If you guys have any questions for our panelists here, I do have more questions I can ask them, but I want to make sure if anybody else has questions that we make sure we have asked them. This is your moment where you can get a
I have a
almost
question.
expert but not quite expert kind of Phil answer. Was that you, Jade?
Yeah, I do have a question.
All right.
I'm newer to the province, but I do work with a company who's launching a foliar biostimulant and nutrient organic line this month. So I guess my question is like, do you ever foliar apply any nutrient, or is that something that takes place really? Like, what does that look like in Ontario? I'm from Newfoundland, so things are a lot different back that way for sure. But I guess I'm just wondering, like, what does a foliar applied nutrient or biostimulant look like for you guys?
I don't use any. There's a few products out there. I don't own a sprayer for one thing, and I'd hate to have a commercial sprayer come in, but so far I've never used any. Uh,
Okay.
So we have a sprayer. It's a carryover from days of yore when we were a conventional farm. So I do make a pass in the around flowering, typically around the time when the conventional folks are putting on a fungicide, and I use a product called Fighter, Phyter. And what Fighter, at least what the theory is behind Fighter, is that it's actually a fungal product, and it I guess infects the plant, if you will, but it doesn't negatively impact the plant. And so the way it's been explained to me is that occupation is 9/10 of the law. So this fungus, it might hit a disease spot or a vulnerable spot where the flower has come off, where typically a fusarium might infect the plant, occupies that space and takes up the space that perhaps a fusarium might take up when it's blowing across your field in the summer. So that's a product that we make a pass with Fighter, and it's kind of an insurance product, for us. It sounds like good science. It's Dr. Sutton from University of Guelph. He was actually my dad's professor when he was there. So, reputable. But with insurance, it's hard to know. You buy it and you hope to never need it.
Yeah, of
There's been a
course.
few years where I have not used it, and I've had like quite bad fusarium. So I just, I use it now. There's also a seed treatment for that because we did have an outbreak of bunt a few years ago, and I had to mow down my entire crop because of that. And that's a product that we do spray on. To be frank, I haven't had much luck with a statistical result when it comes to foliar feeding.
Gotcha.
And so I know there's a bunch of stuff out there, but I've had a hard time showing how the juice is worth the squeeze on that. So I do make a pass. I have used kelp in the past as a biostimulant, but again, it's tough to see if that the juice is worth
Yeah,
the
kelp's
squeeze, for
definitely,
lack
it's a
of a
hard
better
one to
term.
measure, especially for consistency, like year to
Yeah,
year.
yeah.
Interesting.
I just something to say a little bit about fighters. So I work in bee vectoring where we use bees to deliver products out to flowering crops. And yeah, fighter is actually one of the beneficials that we've actually used with that. So it's kind of interesting. If you don't have a sprayer, there are other methods for applications to consider. But anyway, something to think about. How about you, Greg? Jade, have an answer for Jade about those biostimulants, foliar?
We haven't done any foliar stuff. As far as biologicals, I did play around with a very small plot of Envita, which is similar thing, infects the plant, particularly corn, but also some other plants. And then it kind of siphons a little bit of energy from the plant and it provides nitrogen in return. And we didn't have a lot of a bump because we just have enough manure. Basically, there's enough carryover nitrogen in our soils. Um, that, yeah, we're just lucky that way. We don't need that. And yeah, haven't done anything with foliars for sort of the same reason.
All right. Michelle in our chat here has asked with the giant ragweed. So I guess Dean, this would be you, but maybe others as well. What are the best ways you've found to manage or eradicate those weeds?
So giant ragweed's mostly down at the south end of Ontario. Phil may see some. Um, the best way we've had to manage is the weed zapper. They are very susceptible to the weed zapper. They're very tall, very fleshy, full of moisture, and especially if you get it young in soybeans or in wheat, the zapper will knock them right back to the ground and kill them because they're an annual. So they without the weed zapper, we probably would have quit the organic farming because they are such a prevalent weed. We've lost an entire field to it, and they're very tall. They're like an umbrella. They just completely drown out everything, including they'll grow taller than corn. If they're in corn, they'll be a foot taller than corn. If they're in wheat, they'll be a foot taller than wheat.
Oh,
And
wow.
very prevalent. And even the conventional guys, they're Roundup resistant. So yeah, Greg had one a couple years ago. I told him go get it and kill it and bury it and burn it, and I did. Not what you want, but the zapper does control them.
All right. Earl in the comments says he uses buckwheat to counter the giant ragweed, and then for thistles, he uses Sudex. And yeah, Michelle says they have it in Eastern Ontario, Stormont Township. And she says the weed zapper stunted them, but they reshooted from the side.
Yeah. So with giant ragweed, it's best if you can zap them early. But if you're in a crop where you're row cultivating, it'll throw the dirt around the bottom of the plant and you may get a regrowth from the side of the plant because the bottom of the plant has grounded out before it killed the bottom. And so in row crop, and that's what our soybeans all are, we do get that, but it's nothing is a fix. It's just one tool in the chest, and the zapper. I know Phil's done a lot with it, and we've had after seeing his, we went and bought one quite a few years ago. It does work. The earlier you do it, the better it works.
All right, great. All right, well, we're going to wrap things up here. We've just got a couple of things to talk about upcoming with Ontario Organic, and we also want to get your feedback on what you think of these webinars. But before we head off, we're going to be we have another conversation with the three of you also happening in May. And I think what we have on the topic will be around planting grain, and there will be like some extra things that we'll be talking more specifically around that. So we'll be happy to see you all again next month. Right now we have that on the calendar for Monday, May 11th from 12 to 1. So you might want to add that to your calendar. And of course, we'll send out emails around that as well, but you can add that to your calendar. Any words of wisdom to share with everyone here, Phil, Dean, and Greg, before we head off in terms of, if they're growing wheat right now or this upcoming season? Some last words before we sign off here.
I've been doing this 20 years. Every winter, I think I have the answers. By August, when the weeds are everywhere, and you never talk to an organic farmer in August, September. It's just, but yeah, as Phil said, we're not experts. We do best we can. Many tools, I've heard that used, and that's very, very factual. And everybody's just doing the best they can. So if we can share something, yeah, happy to share it.
All right.
I,
Phil?
I would say on the back end at harvest, get your weed off. If it'll thresh, harvest it. And I know this is, self-serving come because I have a little elevator, but nothing good happens to wheat after it's dead and starts to dry down. So don't wait, get it off. Your falling number, your quality rapidly declines if you start getting rained on. So once you can thresh it, harvest it.
Do it right away. All right. Okay, Sammy, if you want to share your screen there, we just want to thanks so much to our panelists, and we really appreciate this. And we look forward to seeing you next month and continuing the conversation as we all get to know you and about your farming. In terms of our upcoming webinars, other than in a month, we'll see this great group back. We have coming up on April 22nd. From Soil to Solution, Farmers and Climate Action. So it's Earth Day, and we're working with Farmers for Climate Solutions to bring this presentation for you. So you can scan that QR code on your screen and register. And we also have another discussion happening April 29th. If you haven't heard about Ask AgriWise, the first national organic data portal that we released this last month, we're going to talk about the journey to get there, what you can find there, and what you're going to see in the future. So you can join us for that on April 29th. And then we also have weekly coffee hours coming up, as I mentioned, with those other other themes that we have happening. All right, and we also want to get you out on farms this summer. So our 2026 Feet on Farms tour is our second year, and it's going to be happening all summer long. We've started to add farms to our agenda, and so we're happy to promote your farm, get people out to your farm, and even show up ourselves and have a table and talk about Ontario Organic. If you would like to host an event on your farm this summer and get on our schedule, please connect with Sammy at organiccouncil.ca. And she's actually dropped that in the chat there if you'd like to see that too. And finally, just a little reminder, we are a not-for-profit grassroots association, and it is really all of you that keeps us going. So if you are not a member, we would love you to become a member. And so you can join the herd. And there's a membership for everyone. So if you're an organic advocate, if you're a business, if you're a producer, if you're an association, if you're an impact partner, we've been actually having a lot more impact partners join us lately who are contributing a portion of their sales right to Ontario Organic. And so buying their products also helps Ontario Organic. And we're really thrilled to have new partnerships. All right. And finally, did you enjoy the webinar today? And would you like to see more? Do you have some feedback from us which we can learn from? We can only improve with your feedback. And so we ask you to scan the code here and provide some feedback for us. If you loved it, please scan the code and tell us that we're on the right path. And it's really important for us to get that feedback from you. So thank you so much, everyone, for joining today. This has been recorded. It will be posted to YouTube. So if you feel like you missed anything, it will be right there for you to watch again. And thanks again so much to our panelists, Phil, Dean, and Greg. We look forward to seeing you next month. Have a great day. Bye.
Thank you.